It's coming. Football is less than 8 weeks away. That means it's time to start talking redraft rankings. And today, we're kicking things off with the quarterbacks on the Fantasy First Down. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. I'm Ben Wasley. Today, we're getting into our redraft stuff, and that means quarterback rankings. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube so you can make sure you can catch up on all my full redraft ranking breakdowns. You can also follow us on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down, on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. My full rankings are on ffdfantasyfootball.com, although I will be releasing them here first in the case of the redraft rankings. And you can also check out my articles at football.rasball.com. So I'm going to be doing a full deep dive into quarterbacks today, but I should mention that I won't be going into positional value. That's because that's so dependent on your league. If someone's telling you that you should be taking a certain player around the third round, for example, that doesn't mean anything. The third round's going to be different for every single league, and where a player should be valued is going to be different too. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit me up about personalized rankings where I cater them specifically to your league. There's more notes on that at the end of the video. Let's get right into it. So, my number one, as it was in Dynasty, is still Josh Allen. The consistency is there. Those legs give him such a good year-to-year baseline where it means it doesn't really matter how great he is through the air. He's going to get so many rushing touchdowns and so many rushing yards that he's still going to be fantastic for fantasy. I'm not saying he's definitely going to be the number one quarterback for fantasy, although I think there's a good chance. I just think he has the better chance of being above most of the other guys in this range than anyone else does. He's so safe. 4 straight top 2 finishes. We know that offense is going to be good. The only concern here, of course, is whether the wide receivers can step up without Stephon Diggs there. But I think bringing in Curtis Samuel was smart. I think he's going to be a better replacement than Gabe Davis. Plus, they got Keon Coleman, who's a true X receiver, who I think is going to be really good as well. So Josh Allen is the guy I'm happy to take first. Where he goes in your drafts is really up to you. But realistically, if you start to see other quarterbacks going off the board and Josh Allen's still there, that might not be a bad time to pull the trigger on him. My number 2 is Jaylen Herz. And I've got him a lot lower in Dynasty, but he's my number 2 in redraft because we know he's probably going to be very good this year as well. There have been a lot of positive talk in the Eagles camp about the step up they're expecting him to take with his passing this season. He's still going to have that fantastic rushing floor. There's going to be a lot of rushing touchdowns. I think this offense is going to be fantastic again. I think Hertz has really strong upside. Basically, anytime you can get a quarterback with a good rushing floor, you know you're probably going to have a good fantasy season, assuming he's able to stay healthy. And Hertz has shown the ability to stay healthy the last couple of years, and that's a really good sign. In fact, I got him 6th overall in a super flex draft recently for Dynasty. He's really falling in some drafts. So I even like him better than that in Dynasty, but in redraft, I particularly like him. He's a top 2 option for me. And realistically, he could be threatening Josh Allen. I just think Allen's a little bit safe because he's a slightly better passer and therefore less likely to be prone to just having a really bad season. Patrick Mahomes slides in at number 3, and I'm iffy on this. You know I'm a Chiefs fan, but I don't let that impact my rankings, and I don't feel very confident in this situation. The reason I've got him at number 3, not a little bit lower after his poor last season, is because they have really gone to great lengths to try to improve the wide receiver room. I do think that's going to take a step up with Xavier Worthy coming in. They got Marquise Brown there now. Hopefully, Rashee Rice take that second-year jump as well, and this offense can really hum along with Travis Kelce helping out as he always has. If that happens, he could certainly be a top 3 option again. I just think that lack of rushing floor compared to the other guys, he's still pretty good on the ground, is the kind of thing that can mean that he can drop off comparatively and is a little bit more prone to quiet seasons. And for that reason, I'm not willing to go out of my way to get him when Allen and Hertz are still on the board. I see those top 3 or 4, and we're going to talk about who number 4 is in a second, in kind of their own tier. And once all but 1 or 2 of them are gone, then I might think about taking the other one. I do like Allen and Hurts a bit better than Mahomes, but not enough to really go out of my way to go and get them when I could just wait and take Mahomes instead. And I'd also happily take this number 4, Lamar Jackson. I do think we saw last year that they did try to get him to pass a little bit more, but ultimately they still reverted into a run-heavy style. The question with Lamar Jackson is always, can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, he's going to give you really good fantasy production. But he's struggled to do that over the last few years. It was good last season, even though he still missed a little bit of time. But I do think that that's always going to be the risk with Lamar because the run game is such a big part of what he does. He's way further down for this than me in Dynasty because I just don't think that career longevity is going to be there. But I do think that with Jackson, you're going to get a good season this season while he's healthy. And I certainly think that for that period when he's healthy, he's probably even going to be better than Mahomes. For that reason, I'm okay with taking him over Mahomes, especially if you're a bit more of a risky kind of guy. Plus, in Superflex, the quarterbacks obviously have more value, but in 1QB leagues, you can probably take Jackson and find a really good replacement off waivers if Jackson gets injured. And for that reason, in a 1QB league, I probably have Jackson a little bit higher than I do in a Superflex league. There's a little bit of a tier drop off here, and number 5 is going to surprise quite a lot of you. It's Dak Prescott for me. And it shouldn't surprise you when you look at his production the last few years. I know he's had some injured years, but when he's been healthy, he's been top 4 twice, and the other time he was top 10. I know we think of him as like a lower tier 1 option, but for me, he is clearly a top 5 guy. He's got enough of a rushing floor. He's got an elite wide receiver, a good tight end. The run game's starting to struggle, and they're having to use Prescott a lot more. And that can only be good for his fantasy production. He's still got that rushing touchdown upside as well. So I really like Dak as like that next guy down. The question is, when do you take him? And it's really hard to work it out. It is so dependent on your league. But he's the kind of guy that if he just keeps on falling and people start taking the other quarterbacks around him, then I would consider getting him. But you can get some real bargains on Dak. I'm usually a proponent of taking QBs quite late or taking one of the studs relatively early on. Dak kind of falls in that mid-range for me, but I do think that you're probably going to find in certain leagues he is going to fall a little bit and you can get a bargain on him. So just keep a look at if he starts to fall, then he might be someone that you pluck, even though you weren't planning on taking a quarterback that early. I really struggle with CJ Stroud. I know the offense was really impressive. I know he was way better than expected. I know that for a rookie, he did a very good job, but is there that much upside? And how's the floor? The floor is really based on the offense. The fact that they've got so many good pass catchers means that it's hard to see them really struggling. But they had a lot of good pass catchers last year, and he still didn't finish as a top 12 quarterback. He just doesn't have that rushing floor. It's okay, but it's not enough to make you feel really good about him from a week-to-week basis. You're probably going to get 1 point a week from that, and that's not enough to make you feel secure. You really need those passing touchdowns. Now, in a 6-point passing touchdown league, I do think that Stroud takes a slight step forward relative to everyone else around him. I do think, and I kind of base this somewhere in the middle, but I do think that he's going to be positive there. In a 4-point passing touchdown league, I probably drop him below the rushing quarterbacks that are behind him, simply because he doesn't offer you that production, and you really need to get it out of yards and out of passing touchdowns, and I just don't know that he's going to be able to do that sufficiently. I'm also a little bit concerned that the defense will improve, and he's not going to need to throw for quite as many yards, plus the run game could potentially improve as well. Now, to be fair, even if that all works together and the run game improves, that's going to ultimately help Stroud because he's going to be able to pass more effectively. I'm just a little bit nervous for a couple of reasons. I think in most leagues, I won't be getting any shares. In fact, I don't think I have any CJ Stroud shares that weren't guys I picked up in Dynasty last year. So I would be a little bit wary on holding back on Stroud and just not going out of my way to get him. I know a lot of people are excited, but if you overdraft him, you're essentially drafting him at your ceiling. You're not getting any value there. So you should be drafting for value and trying to take guys a little bit later than you think they should go so that you can at least access that upside and know that you got another good play before that as well. Anthony Richardson's a really scary one. I didn't love him coming in last year. I wasn't sure how he was going to function in the NFL. I wasn't sure that his lack of college experience was going to mean that he struggled when he got to the higher level. And I think we saw he was pretty solid. He certainly showed a very impressive run game. We knew that was going to happen, but his passing was good enough to feel good about him. They've now brought in another weapon. They've got Adonai Mitchell as well. I expect he's still going to continue running. I think this offense in general is probably going to slightly improve, especially having Jonathan Taylor back, who wasn't back for most of Richardson's games is also going to help. So I think all up, it's going to be a positive season for Anthony Richardson. But gosh, he's just a little bit scary for me. I am happy that he managed to start at the start of last year. I didn't really see that coming. But after that, obviously the injury hurt him. I think that means you might see falls in a few drafts, and that might mean you can get a bargain here. I just wouldn't be going out of my way to get him. He's certainly got more value in a 4-point passing touchdown league because he gives so many rushing touchdowns and so many rushing yards that's a fair chunk of his production. So for that reason, I think you need to keep that in mind when valuing him and understanding your league settings. Now, this is pretty low for Joe Burrow, and I don't feel great about it. I've got him a lot higher in Dynasty. I feel like the talent's there, but I really need to see the offense being a little bit better this year. Even when Burrow was healthy and playing, it just wasn't quite working. He wasn't quite producing for fantasy the way we hope. He was making more errors than we normally expect. Plus, they lose Tyler Boyd now. I don't know that Burden coming in is going to be a true replacement. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Burden's not even a starter. That's Jermaine Burden, the rookie. It wouldn't surprise me if they use Josefas and a bit of Irwin. I mean, that's not ideal. They've still got Jamar Chase. They've got T. Higgins, but I don't know. There's something about Burrow that makes me a little bit nervous. So for that reason, I've put him at number 8. But realistically, if you wanted to take him in the top 5, I would not argue with you. I see the upside there. I would personally take him behind Dak at least, but I definitely flirted with the idea of having him behind Stroud and behind Richardson. Certainly in a 6-point passing touchdown league, I think I'd have him ahead of Richardson. It's just whether you take him ahead of Stroud or not. I'd probably just wait and take whichever of the two is left over. And if I get neither of them, I'm kind of okay with that because they're just a little bit scary. I think you might be paying a little bit too much when the true upside is limited with both Stroud and Burrow. Kyler Murray obviously has had injury issues the last 3 seasons. Was obviously worse last season, but he's looked pretty good when he's played, and we know that he's got QB1 overall production as well. He finally gets Marvin Harrison Jr. I nearly forgot his name for a second. That would have been embarrassing. Obviously, Trey McBride is back. So there are some weapons there. James Conner will continue to be a really good option, but the biggest thing with Kyler is his legs. If he's going to continue running and producing like that, and I think he probably will because it's a big part of his game, then he's still going to be good for fantasy. And realistically, you might be able to get him quite late and get a real bargain. I have been in leagues where he goes super early, like top 5 in Dynasty, which is crazy to me. But I've also been in leagues where he's gone outside the top 10 in redraft. Neither of those ideas really make sense to me. I think he belongs somewhere in the middle there. And I feel like if you start to see him fall, then this is another one where there might be an opportunity. It's just important with all these ideas of players falling, just understand whether they're actually falling relative to their value or whether it just feels like people are waiting and you don't want to jump in early. You kind of want to be getting the end of the tier rather than the start of the tier, unless everyone else is going to pick immediately after you. So there's a bit of risk in taking Murray. I'd probably want him to fall to me a little bit, so I'd feel better about the significant injury risk. Jordan Love is number 10. I know a lot of you out there are big fans of Jordan Love. Every time I mention Jordan Love somewhere, people jump into my DMs and they're telling me how he's going to be fantastic this year. People comment on the videos, and thank you for doing that. Please do comment and talk about how good the Packers are going to be. I mean, look, the Packers were good last year. And Jordan Love was very good last year, but we've seen a lot of quarterbacks finish in that top 5, top 6, top 7, and fail to back it up. A couple of QBs who finished in the top 7 the last couple of years. Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, Brock Purdy, Matthew Stafford. Okay, QBs do surprisingly jump up into the top 6 or 7 and then fall back again. They just have very efficient seasons where everything goes right and then they fall back. Now, to be fair, the Packers have a history of being very efficient. I've had these same issues and worries with Aaron Rodgers in the past, and he's just proven to be able to be quite efficient. Again, same thing with the run game. They seem to just be able to run a really efficient offense, but I'm still a little bit scared about Jordan Love. I think that the upside is limited because we saw a really good season last season, but I don't know that that's really in the realms of possibility to happen again, unless he's managed just to keep that elite efficiency. And I don't know that that's going to be able to keep happening because I think teams are going to start to work him out. He doesn't have the greatest run game. He's got a lot of good pass catching options, but I don't know. I just don't see it. I think 10's a reasonably fair space to take him, but some people are really trying to go out of their way to get him early. I know that it's exciting is a new name, but please just pump the brakes a little bit and take him where the value is right, so that if he has another really good season for whatever reason, you at least got him late enough that you can also get other good players around him to take advantage of the fact that you got another good quarterback cheap rather than paying too much to get your good quarterback. Jane Daniels is number 11, the first rookie off the board, and it's not Caleb Williams. And I think I've signposted this a little bit when talking about my rookie rankings and redraft rankings. I think Williams is going to have a really good longevity, but he's more of a passing quarterback. Daniels is more of a rushing quarterback. I think they're both going to be solid in their first year, but anytime you've got rookie quarterbacks, having good rushing production is a really good way to get fantasy points. And I do think that Daniels is going to be very, very, very good on the ground. And we've seen guys who come out in a very run heavy early on, they can manage to have good positive rookie seasons, whereas guys who are more pass heavy do tend to struggle a little bit to get acclimatized to the NFL. I think that we're talking about like a Lamar Jackson light sort of situation with the rushing. And I do think with the passing, he's got a good deep game. I feel like he's going to be able to utilize Terry McLaurin. I wish they'd give him slightly more weapons, but I still feel like he's going to be able to do so much on the ground that the upside's there. We're getting into that range where you're starting to get him into those middle rounds, depending on your league settings. I certainly like this pick a lot more in redraft because I think the upside is huge, but in Superflex, there's way more risk. And for that reason, I'm willing to pump the brakes a little on him in Superflex and take him a little bit later than I would otherwise, because I think there's also a realistic possibility that he doesn't even finish in the top 25 quarterbacks and something just goes wrong. Plus, he's got a slightly higher injury risk than usual because of how much he's going to have to do on the ground. Kirk Cousins might be a surprising name in the top 12 for you, but he finishes in the top 12 all the time. This is kind of his normal range. I know that Minnesota's very pass heavy, or people say they're pass heavy. It's really, they've been pass heavy with Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins has always kind of been pass heavy. That's what he does. I know he doesn't offer that rushing floor, but he's really aggressive and he's really good. I think we kind of underrate him a little bit, but he's actually a very good quarterback. He's been paid a lot of money over the years for a very good reason. People say, oh, he can't win the big games or whatever. I don't care. I want him to be good for fantasy. I expect him to give me a lot of passing yards and a lot of passing touchdowns. I do understand that having Bijan Robinson in there does mean I'm going to lose some goal line carries and more than I normally would. But I do still think with Cousins, there's always that upside of a guy who's a fantastic passing quarterback. Has he aged out yet? Well, I think it doesn't matter too much because of how cheaply you're getting him. I've got him ranked 12th. But there's no way he's going to go 12th overall in your league. There will be other guys that go ahead of him. Guys like Brock Purdy are definitely going to go ahead of him, but there's way more upside to Cousins. I can see a huge amount of upside with Cousins because this offense could be really good this year. They might also suck, but I do think that they've made the right moves, and they've made the right moves to be really positive. I think this could be a Matthew Stafford from a couple of years ago sort of situation where he finally just has a big breakout season, and I can see that same thing happening here with Kirk Cousins, who's had some good production in the past, was injured last year. I expect moving to the Falcons, this is going to be positive. You can also get him a little bit later on because people are going to be scared off by Michael Penix Jr., but especially if you're in a 1 QB league, you don't have to worry about that at all. You just pick up someone else and put them in. Cousins is a guy you can get pretty darn late. I really like the upside here. Number 13 for me is the aforementioned Brock Purdy. Top 6 finish last season, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Brock Purdy's not that good. He's an excellent system quarterback, but he's actually not a very good quarterback. In most systems, he would really struggle. I know some people aren't going to like me saying that, but it's just the reality of the situation. He's got outstanding weapons around him. He does a good job of just making sure that they're utilized, and that creates fantasy production. You've got a running back who's going to do a lot with the checkdowns you give him. You've got excellent underneath passes like Deebo Samuel. You've got excellent blocking wide receivers and an excellent blocking tight end. Brandon Ayuk's been very good in this system. You've got George Kittle, who's one of the league's best tight ends as well, and quite underrated these days compared to a lot of the other guys coming out. I do think that Brock Purdy's in a very fortunate situation. For Dynasty, I don't like his situation at all because ultimately some of those guys are going to move on, or ultimately he's going to move on, and he's going to not be in that system anymore. And his lack of actual true arm talent and general NFL talent, I guess, is going to show up. Now, don't get me wrong. He's still a very good player. He's significantly better at sport than I am at any sport and ever will be. But realistically, I do think that for fantasy, there are probably better options. You're not getting much of a rushing upside. You really need the team to be excellent and scoring a lot of points for Purdy to produce. It would not shock me at all if he does what Geno Smith did a couple of years ago and really falls down. Might not be this year, might be next year, but one of these times we're going to draft Brock Purdy way too early. I'd rather try to get bargains in my drafts, and for that reason, I'm just not taking Purdy at all. He's usually going earlier than I'm willing to take him. Tua Tagovailoa is a really difficult one. Obviously, had a lot of those head injuries last year, which made him very scary. But there was clearly upside with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, and we saw that he finished top 10 last year, and that's fantastic. I'm really glad that Tua managed to stay healthy. I do think there's still plenty of upside for this year as well, but you kind of need something similar to happen where you get a lot of big plays out of Hill and Waddle. I like the fact they brought in Geno Smith. I feel like they weren't getting enough out of Durham Smythe. They needed that real red zone weapon because they passed a lot. They didn't pass a lot in the red zone. They ran a lot in the red zone. And for that reason, I'm willing to wait a little bit longer on Tua because it wouldn't surprise me if they do the same thing. A lot of Raheem Mostert in the red zone, a lot of Devon Achane running out games. I do think there's always that risk of the fact that the run game is so strong that Tua just doesn't get involved enough, even though they're a very high-scoring team. Plus, you can't rely on them having those massive 90-point blowout games that they had last season against, I think it was the Broncos. I don't think that sort of thing can be relied upon to happen again. And for that reason, I'm a little bit lower on Tua. But still higher than Trevor Lawrence, who realistically, I think has been a little bit disappointing. I was kind of shocked that they gave him a massive extension. I know he's a solid quarterback, but I didn't feel like he justified that much money. He really hasn't done a particularly good job with some really good pass catches. I admit the O-line's let him down a little bit, but I mean, he had a top 2 running back. He had Christian Kirk. He had Calvin Ridley. He had Zay Jones for much of last year. I mean, this is a good offer. Evan Ingram is a top 5 tight end. Like, he's got a whole lot of players who are very good, and yet he's just kind of been average. I really expected a little bit better. For that reason, I've got him a little bit lower. I mean, he did struggle in fantasy as well. You'd hope for a little bit more of a rushing floor, but that's just not what's happening with him at the moment. I don't know. He could bounce back and end up in the top 10. I hope he does. The talent's certainly there, but I'm just not willing to bargain on it on draft day. I'm happy to take him late. He's the kind of name that I really would like to add if he gets into the really late rounds and I'm able to get him with a true bargain. I just wouldn't want to get him if I'm having to pay a value pick for him. If I haven't really filled the most valuable parts of my bench yet, I probably don't want to be thinking about getting Trevor Lawrence. I would rather just wait a little bit longer. And I think there's other people of equivalent value around as well. Plus, he'll probably still be there later on anyway. Jared Goff is a little bit lower than you think based on the fact that he's got back-to-back top 10 finishes. But they don't pass a lot. They just run the ball so much. And they've managed to be efficient, and Goff's managed to get enough passing touchdowns. Sam Laporta's very good. Amon-Ra St. Brown's very good. But I don't know. I just don't feel good about the fact that their run game is so strong. It does seem to limit Goff's upside. He's also just not a fantastic quarterback. He's a good quarterback. And he deserved to be paid, and I'm really happy for him that trade worked out for him and, frankly, for Matthew Stafford as well. The fact that he actually held him around as a starting quarterback was awesome. I think when that trade happened, a lot of people thought that he'd become the backup and they'd go the rookie route. The fact that they've managed to work it with him is fantastic news, and I do like the fact that he's managing to produce. I just think with Dynasty, there's a bit of a lack of upside. You could find him in the top 10 again if he stays healthy and a lot of others get injured, as happened last year. But I'm not willing to go out of my way to get him in fantasy. I think that there's better options out there. Number 17 for me is Caleb Williams. I feel kind of uncomfortable with this. I feel like I want this to be higher, but I can't put him ahead of those other guys who are just so much safer. There's a real history of rookie quarterbacks struggling. I know CJ Stroud was fantastic last year, but for the most part, rookie quarterbacks only really have success in their rookie year if they're really a running quarterback. Okay, think about Kyler Murray. Think about Lamar Jackson, guys like that who were really good when they got their opportunity, but they provided such a good rushing floor, and that rushing floor is so useful. Now, Caleb Williams can run. He's certainly not a pocket passer, truly, although potentially he does play like that occasionally. I do think that rushing floor is there. We saw it from him in college. I think we could see it in the NFL. They put a lot of weapons in place. I love the fact that they've got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. That's insane. Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, who's a fantastic pass catching running back. I mean, the weapons are there. It's just a question of whether Caleb Williams can actually play up to the standard that's required. We're seeing with a lot of rookies, they too tend to struggle, but sometimes they just surprise us. And I think the upside's certainly there. I love him in Dynasty. He is going to be good at some stage. I do just think that he might have a few growing pains, and that's why I put him behind a couple of guys who I think are safer. But I do think that Williams arguably has more upside than a Goff, especially than a Tua, Trevor Lawrence. I'd put him up towards that Brock Purdy range if you're willing to take more of a risk, and you can get him late in drafts, which I absolutely love. Justin Herbert is really late here. I find this one tough because Justin Herbert's a good player and he's had some really good fantasy seasons, but what's happening in LA at the moment? You have to feel like they're going to go run heavy, but they don't have fantastic running backs. They haven't got the greatest of pass catchers. They just lost two really good pass catchers. They haven't really got a great tight end. Lad McConkey is going to be very busy, but that's not necessarily going to be great for Herbert. I don't know that Josh Palmer is going to be the guy that they're really going to be able to rely on there. There's just a lot of concerns for me around Herbert. And for that reason, I'm taking him way later. I can't do it. I think there's a lot of risk. I'm like, if he stays healthy, he will near definitely finish higher than the QB 18. I'm not saying this is a predicted finishing spot. This is simply how I rank him for when I take him in leagues, because I think you get him much higher and all of a sudden you're not getting any value. I feel like with every pick, I want to be getting some sort of value with that pick. I want to feel like he could finish higher than I'm picking him. And I think I take him too much higher than this. I think the odds of that happening is very low. So that's why I've got him down here so low. And in most leagues, you won't be getting your hands on him. Like if you actually follow these rankings, I think most of you probably won't get Justin Herbert, and I'm kind of okay with that if I'm completely honest. Matthew Stafford comes in at 19. I feel like this also might be a little bit low. It's down to the fact that he is a little bit older, no rushing floor, but I also think that the run game could be very good in LA. He should kind of be in that same ballpark as Kirk Cousins, but he's not. Kirk Cousins is a little bit more aggressive, managed to kind of make it work. I think at this stage in their careers, Kirk Cousins just frankly a little bit better. Matthew Stafford's still a very good player, but the injuries have started to take their toll. Had that big 2021 season, but since then, even though the players around him have been very good, Puka's broken out. Cooper Kupp's been excellent for a long time, but I don't know. I just can't trust him to be good when there's going to be so much groundwork. Kyren Williams is going to be great, and they brought in another really good running back. I think Blake Corum's going to get really busy as well. I just can't trust Stafford for this reason. There should be another high-scoring offense, but you'd have to feel like these kind of capped as kind of like a 10 to 15 range quarterback, and I think he'll probably finish in there again. That's still okay if you're getting him in the very late rounds. I certainly think he's someone you could combine with a riskier pick, maybe a Caleb Williams. You could probably get both of those guys late, and then you can feel really good about the upside and also really good about the floor. Number 20 for me is Deshaun Watson. I don't feel great about this either. I just think that the offense looks like it could be really good. Amari Cooper was fantastic last year. David Njoku was fantastic last year. They brought in Jerry Jeudy, which I really like. Elijah Moore was a bit of a dud. Cedric Tillman could take a step up, but realistically, it's going to be Cooper, it's going to be Njoku, it's going to be Jeudy, and I think obviously the run game as well is going to be heavily involved. How good is the run game going to be? Well, it's probably going to depend on how healthy Nick Chubb is. Jerome Ford was a top 16 running back last year, and they really did need to rely on him. But then we saw Joe Flacco come in towards the playoffs and look really good and be really effective and actually be pretty solid for fantasy as well. Deshaun Watson should be better than old man Flacco. I say old man Flacco, I'm possibly older than him, but he should be better, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the case. For that reason, I have to bake in a whole lot of risk. Plus, if you're looking at guys in this range, you're either in a really deep league where QBs start to add a little bit of value, or you're in a super flex league. And if you're in a super flex league, the idea of taking Watson, it's kind of scary. All the guys in this range have real dud potential. I think Watson is the first of them where I could really see a possibility that he loses the job. And that makes it scary anytime you're working with multiple QBs, because there's obviously going to be less available for you on waivers. Now, I'm not going to go through the graphic with everyone else, but I will go through my top 10 very briefly. People were taking Aaron Rodgers in the top 10 last season. He got injured. I understand he got injured, but nothing else has really changed. Plus, they've brought in better pass catchers. They brought in Mike Williams. They brought in Malaki Corley, who admittedly probably won't be involved a lot. Breece Hall should be healthier. I don't understand why Rodgers is so much lower for so many people. This is actually considered high on him by a lot of people. Now, to be fair, I would very low on Rodgers last season. So this actually isn't that bad by my consideration, but I'm shocked that everyone else has dropped down. I don't know what they've seen that made them go, this is a top 10 option to this is a guy I don't want anywhere near my team. For me, he's somewhere in the middle. This feels slightly low for him. I think his upside is capped. There'll be no rushing floor. And I don't think the Jets are necessarily going to be good this year. I think we kind of saw that they struggle without a good QB. Is Rodgers someone that's able to elevate a team? I don't know that he is at this stage in his career. So we'll have to see what happens. But Rodgers goes a little bit lower for me for that reason. But in a superflex league, I don't mind the idea of him being a QB2. I mean, at least he's secure in his job. We've seen they're not able to get anything going out of anyone else. So Rodgers has to be the guy. They have to make it work. Baker Mayfield, this also feels a little bit low for me. He was actually pretty good last year. He was nearly top 10. I think he was definitely top 12 among the QBs last year. And I think there's certainly some upside with him. Whenever you got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, there's always a possibility your team's going to be good. You obviously have to worry about the run game being very run heavy. It's possible the defense takes a bit of a dive because they do have a lot of players aging out, but that's only good for the quarterback. That means a lot more garbage time production, potentially big shootouts. Could mean getting less of the ball, of course, but I think it's probably going to be positive for him. Can Mayfield back it up? I think that's the real question we're all asking it. I mean, who knows? I think possibly. I think the upside's there, but how much upside is there? I don't know that we're talking about a guy who could potentially be a top 8 quarterback. I just think like end of the top 10 kind of region is kind of the range that you're hoping for there. I think that's possible. I'm just not going out of my way to make it happen. Daniel Jones is number 23 for me, and he's ahead of quite a few other guys who I think are probably going to be better and are a little bit safer. But Jones has that rushing floor. We sometimes forget that, but he's surprisingly good as a runner, or at least surprisingly effective as a runner. I think we can all remember that game where he randomly just tripped over while being about to score a touchdown. I remember that game because I had him and I needed those points. And I remember watching it going, oh no, my week is in the toilet. Look, that's always possible with Jones. Random rubbish is always going to happen. I think the fact that they've finally brought him in an actual weapon in Malik Neighbors is really positive. I'm a little bit concerned about having no Darren Waller now. Certainly don't have Saquon Barkley to rely on. I think realistically, the Giants could be really bad this year. The defense certainly doesn't look like it's going to be good enough to win them games. I think the offense is going to be chasing. But we saw a few years ago when Blake Bortles was at Jacksonville, the team was awful. And he was really good for fantasy because he had that slight rushing floor and because he was constantly chasing games and he was getting half of his points in garbage time. I think it could happen with Daniel Jones here as well. So I think there is some upside there. For that reason, I've got Jones ranked against a lot of the other also-rans. Geno Smith, I mean, he was a top 6 quarterback 2022. That wasn't that long ago. He's got a lot of good pass catches. They've got a new OC in. There are reasons to feel good about Geno. I just can't put him higher than this. I feel kind of weird about it. I feel like he kind of should be higher, but it's kind of like a lot of good quarterback options, or at least not good quarterback options, but quarterback options I feel okay about this year. And for that reason, I just have to put Geno Smith lower. Bryce Young for the Panthers. I mean, he was disappointing last year. I think he probably takes a step forward, but I don't really want any Panthers. Leggett maybe is the exception. They've at least put some passing weapons in there. Deontay Johnson's a good piece. Adam Thielen was great at times last year. I think he's going to fall off. We might see some more Mingo, but look, Bryce Young's going to really need to show something. Does he have enough of a rushing floor to make me feel good about him? No. For that reason, I'm just putting him lower because I think there's such dud capacity. Same thing with Will Levis, who they've actually given some really good pass catches to as well. Of course, they've got DeAndre Hopkins. They've obviously brought in Calvin Ridley as well, who he could be good or he could be a bit of a cancer. We don't really know what's going to happen there. There's a lot of weapons there and there's a lot to feel good about, but Will Levis is not one of those things. I think they're still going to lean on the run game a lot. I think they're going to keep things pretty passive. If their secondary improves, they're not even going to need to play for points. So it's hard to feel particularly good about Will Levis. I don't think he has the talent to really hold this job either. Derek Carr will finish higher than the QB 27, but not enough high to make me feel good about him. He loses so many touches to Taysom Hill. The run game is so run heavy. The whole offense is a little bit of a mess. They'll probably still win 8 games or something like that, but it's just hard to feel good about Carr in fantasy, and so I put him this low. From 28, Sam Darnold. That seems a little bit crazy, I know, because there's still a possibility JJ McCarthy starts week 1. I personally think that's not going to be the case, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Sam Darnold is the starter all season. If that's the case, the Minnesota quarterback traditionally has been like a top 12 option. Think about Kirk Cousins. The problem is Sam Darnold's not Kirk Cousins, neither is JJ McCarthy. And for that reason, I'm worried about the whole Vikings offense in general. If anything, I actually like the running backs better. But I do think the Darnold at least offers some upside. When you're in a good, high scoring offense, there's always the possibility that you're going to manage to score points. So for that reason, especially in a super flex league, because if it's a redraft league, why are you looking this low in the rankings? In a super flex league, I do think that Darnold's a guy that you can take really late and then actually get some good production out of. So I do like the idea of taking him. The only issue is, even if you get good production, there's still a good chance that the Vikings miss the playoffs and then they bring in JJ McCarthy and then Darnold's not useful to you anyway. So there's a little bit of risk there, but I see the upside, and for that reason, I'm willing to take him that early. Russell Wilson to me is the clear starter in Pittsburgh, but I don't want the Pittsburgh starter. Even if Justin Fields wasn't there, I wouldn't want Russell Wilson. If Fields was starting, I'd be more interested because of that rushing floor, but I don't know. Like, they just don't pass the ball enough. Russell Wilson, I don't know that he's washed. He actually looked okay last year in a terrible offense, but I just don't know that I can feel good about him passing the ball enough to give you true upside. If he keeps the job the whole season, he probably finishes as a top 20 quarterback, but that's not great. That's not going to win you your league, certainly. And Jacoby Brissett is number 30. I expect, again, that he probably keeps the job all season, but he's not going to be very good. Obviously, the only guys I've missed out are the Raiders guys, where we don't even know who is starting, and the Denver guys, where their offense is just going to be absolutely terrible. I don't want Bo Nix this year. Even in Dynasty, I don't particularly want him in general. I think they're just going to really struggle. You can kind of see who I think is going to be poor this year. And before we finish things off, a little bit of a plug. Been doing this for a few years now. Got really good feedback on it. Usually it really starts to kick into gear in a couple of weeks' time. But I like to help you guys out with your rankings. I mean, that's why I do this. I do this for fun, essentially. I definitely don't get paid a lot for it. So for that reason, I like to help you guys out with your league specifically and help you to draft effectively. It's really hard on draft day to know what position to pick. It's hard to know how much to value your positions, especially because every league is different. Is it PPR? Do you have 4 or 6 point passing touchdown for your QBs? Do you have tight end premium? Do you have 3 wide receivers or 2 wide receivers? How many flex spots do you have? What's the value of those flex spots? How long is your bench? What should you be doing with each pick? What should you expect with each pick? All that stuff is stuff that I can help you out in with my personalized rankings. And it's literally only $10, $10 US dollars. Obviously, it's a little bit more for me down here. But $10 US dollars. All you got to do, email me and just ask about it. If you're just interested, hit me up, benwasley23@gmail.com. I would love to help you out. If you don't, totally fine. Loved having you here. It's all good. Just something I like to offer because a lot of people ask questions about it. I think it makes it easier to get it done that way. Cool. That's all we've got for our QB rankings. I'll be back in the next few days for my running back rankings. That'll obviously be a slightly longer one. Hopefully my voice has recovered properly for that because I've been sick the last week or so. So if that was a little bit rusty, I'm sorry. At least I got my new mic though over the last few days. Hopefully that's nice and clear. Going to keep working on tuning that in properly. If you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. That really helps us out, and I really appreciate the support that you guys are giving. We only started this channel 3 months ago, and it's really great for me just to have people who are interested, engaging, continuing to build that community. So thank you for being a part of that. Also got a really good community over at Instagram. We've got a good 3,000 or 4,000 people over there, so make sure you hit us up at the Fantasy First Down. I post all my graphics of rankings over there, and I think it's a really good way, especially during the season, to just have a really clear look at what my rankings look like without having to go through the website. I get them out there first as I make them, as opposed to on the website where I kind of have to put them all together and make sure they're in order first. So check that out on Instagram. My Twitter is at Fantasy First Down with no O, because I couldn't fit the whole thing in on Twitter, which is a little bit ridiculous, but it is what it is. You know, they like to keep the characters short. I post a lot of stuff on there, just links to stuff. A lot of ideas and thoughts and movements I'm making in my rankings, plus a lot of Rasball stuff. I do a lot of work with Rasball. They are fantastic. They really support me, get me to write articles for them as well. That's where you can find my Dynasty rankings as well. So please head over to Rasball too at football.rasball.com. They've got some fantastic tools, especially during the season. I'll talk about them a little bit more as we get closer to the season. And finally, my website, which is getting done up at the moment, and is going to be improved, but you can still go to the old website now. It's ffdfantasyfootball.com. You can find all my rankings there. You'll find Dynasty there. You will find rookie rankings there. You'll find my old redraft rankings, but I'm doing them up now. I just haven't finished yet. And for that reason, I didn't want to put them up there when they're kind of a little bit oldish. So if you really look, you can find the old redraft rankings, but they're really old. They're a few months old. And for that reason, I wouldn't be going there for a redraft quite yet. Just wait a couple of days and I will have them up there properly. That's all I've got for now. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. 2 months to football. I'm super excited already. Gosh, there's so much to do. Hope you've enjoyed the show today and look forward to chatting to you guys in a couple of days' time.